What is going on, gunfighters? Saddle up for another episode of Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. First and foremost, I am a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. God has blessed me to do many things in my life where I could do nothing apart from Him. U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran, did a couple of tours in Iraq. As an assaultman after my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also did several years in law enforcement, LAPD. I worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency. That's all I'll say about that. Been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion and West Coast regional rifle champion. Won more shooting competitions with the talent that God's given me than I can actually remember. Was blessed to be the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. Our primary job, the reason we primarily existed, was to stop active shooters. I got the opportunity to head up and be the commander of that team. I grew up around guns, hunting and shooting and competing at a very early age. Been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast, and bear and elk and all manner of things. I've even been a professional big game hunter and guide. But again, most importantly, I'm a Christian. And I am your host, Michael Milito. Welcome to Gunfighter Life. So, gunfighters, as February is about to begin, it's the last few days of January, it seems like it finally hit me that it's 2023. I mean, I knew that logically. It's just kind of starting to sink in that now it's 2023. And in thinking about that, I was thinking, what are some of the best gun values for 2023? What do I think is a good bang for your buck in 2023? And good value does not mean cheap. There's a lot of really dirt cheap gun manufacturers that make junk, to be quite frank. There's actually some companies, I think, that get away with making fairly expensive guns that are junk, that I wouldn't consider good guns. But a good value, I think, is more than just cheap. It's getting the most for your money. You could think about this with anything, like a light bulb. If you had to replace a light bulb and you bought the dirt cheapest one and it burnt out every single week and you had to replace it, but it only cost $1, but you had to replace it every week, taking some of your time, and you couldn't count on it, right? If something emergency happened and you wanted to flip on the light switch, it may not work. And cumulatively over time, yeah, it might be cheaper that day, but over the course of a year, you're probably better off stepping up to a $5 or $20 light bulb that will actually work for that whole length of time. That's kind of what I'm talking about with guns when I say a good value in firearms. Maybe not the cheapest. You might be able to find a comparable gun, comparable size and capacity, that's cheaper. That's not what I'm talking about. If it's dirt cheap and it doesn't work, then it's not a good value. Give you another analogy. If you've listened for any length of time, either this or the Alpha Male podcast, you'll know that one of my go-to dinners, usually until fairly recently, my most common by far dinner was 10 eggs. That was my dinner, 10 eggs, make them a bunch of different ways. Well, for a long time, that was the best value because for years and years, if I remember correctly, eggs hovered between $3 and $4, $3 and change and $4 and change for a flat. A flat is 60 eggs. And I would just buy those. It's a very good value. That's a lot of protein and good fat and cholesterol for the money, right? It was a really, really good value. Well, now I'm eating more ground beef and ground turkey and chicken because it's actually cheaper now that the price of eggs have skyrocketed. Now that's the best value. Not that eggs aren't still good and I don't still eat them. I do. But they're not necessarily the best value anymore. Where before they by far work as break that down by 60 eggs for $4 or $4 and some change. It was less than $1 a meal for all that protein. Anyway, just getting into this, I haven't talked about a single gun yet, but I'm talking about value. I'm going to start off with a list with a gun I saw yesterday. I took my wife to a gun show yesterday. I'm blessed with a very awesome wife. We went walking around the gun show, just looking at stuff. A big reason for that was honestly to get ideas for new shows. And maybe the pistol that started this, the gun that started this more than anything else, was the Mossberg handguns. If you don't know, most people know Mossberg for shotguns. They make handguns, and they have for a couple of years now. You'll know if you've listened for any length of time. I say, don't be a beta tester in a gunfight. Get something that's proven. I don't generally trust my life to something unless it's been out and tested for a few years. I don't want the next latest and greatest whiz-bang thing, because no matter who makes it, all the manufacturers from time to time have this problem. It may have teething issues, and I don't want to deal with that if it's for gunfighting. If it's for a range toy, that's fine. That being said, the Mossberg pistols I think have been out long enough now and have a good enough reputation. I have had zero problems with them. And I have heard of zero problems with them. They're MC series. And they're made in America. I mean, Mossberg, it's a good American company, I think, as far as I know anyway. I don't see how the sausage is made, but to me they seem like a good American company. And I think they make a good quality handgun, and I think they're often overlooked. I could do a whole other episode on overlooked guns, and this gun will be on there too. But it's a good value. They're not overly expensive. They're American made. They even have optics ready ones. That's pretty cool. There's nothing really groundbreaking. They're very traditional in design, but they're a good size. And by good size, I mean a lot of people when they go to have a carry handgun, they carry a gun that's so small that they can't really shoot it well. And I think the Mossbergs are a good balance in size. Like, they're small enough to be concealable and compact, but they're big enough that it's not like trying to shoot a super subcompact 9mm that sometimes can just beat you up. Or even worse, the very, very small 380s that can have a lot of recoil because they're in such a small, light gun and there's not a lot of, let's say, surface area to hang on to. I think the Mossbergs are a good balance, and they're a good value. They're not a lot of money. I'm going to stay away from quoting exact prices with inflation and whoever you get it from or whatever, but they're a good value. So look at them, a good American-made company, a good American-made handgun, I think often overlooked, and a really good value, the Mossberg handguns. The next one, another good American company, and I don't apologize. If I can find a comparable product that's good and a good value and American, I'm going to go for the American one, and I make no apologies for that. The Ruger Security 9. It's a good gun. They've been around a while. For the average person that wants a full-size handgun, good ergonomics, and I'd say a better trigger pull than a lot of guns, that Ruger Security 9 is a good gun. They're simple, they're robust. I've worked on them. I've known guys that have run them. I would say if you're in the small percentage of guys that runs, thousands of rounds a year through a gun, I'd probably step up to something else. But for the vast majority of people that want like a home defense handgun or just a handgun for the vehicle, Ruger Security 9 is a good value. Is it the best handgun on the market? No. I wouldn't even put it in the top 5. But I would put it maybe in the top 5 for the best value of handguns on the market. Now, they also make the Ruger American handgun. I have less experience with these, but again, they're not new. I would stay away from any kind of new crazy variant that's a vast departure from a previous design. But the Ruger American handgun and the Ruger Security 9 have been around a few years, I think, and again, I have heard nothing really bad overall about them. A good value, a good American-made company. Ruger is kind of known for making stuff that works well and affordable for the, let's call it blue-collar common man, and I like that about them. I get no sponsors here, I get no kickbacks. I refuse sponsors, I've refused sponsors in the past. If you want to support the honest content, consider becoming a patron. This show is supported by viewers like you. That's why I don't take bribes. I'm not the guy getting paid to have a certain gun and then tell you how great it is. There's a lot of guns that are cheaper that I would not put on this list, or even more expensive I wouldn't put on this list because I don't think they're a good value. And if you value that, hopefully you'll consider supporting. If you tried a link for Patreon in the past and it didn't work, it was some crazy thing with coding or servers or something I don't even pretend to understand. It should be fixed now. Also, you get some pretty cool insider content for Patreon. And you get to be an active participant of the community of this gun tribe. So if you want to be part of that and contribute to the podcast, consider becoming a patron. Anyway, back to the show. The next one, a really good value in handguns. And that's used Glocks. Glocks have been so popular for so long and such a big part of the market that finding used ones is not very hard. It's not difficult, right? If you're at a place that sells quite a bit of used handguns, likely they'll have some traded in or sold used Glocks. And if you've listened, you know that I'm no huge fanboy of Glock. I own Glocks, I shoot Glocks. I've carried Glocks professionally, both as a cop and a private contractor. However, I'm not a big Glock fanboy. But I won't deny that they work, and they work well, and they're very simple, and they are one of the most forgiving guns of neglect, and they are very forgiving of abuse and neglect. And that said, the vast majority of people that buy Glocks likely don't abuse them and don't put them in harsh conditions and don't overshoot them. I mean, how many shooters do you know that shoot, 20, 30, 50,000, 100,000 rounds to a handgun? Most don't. The vast majority might get it and take it to the range once or twice a year, and then maybe they decide to sell it, which makes it a great value for you. So, used Glocks. If you want one that you can kind of trick out, you might look at the Gen 3s because I believe the patents are expired on those. That's why everybody's copying them. But any of them, if you get them used at a good value, it's a good value. There's not much that breaks on Glocks. Some things do, and yeah, Glocks do break, but a lot of the parts are crazy cheap. If you have trouble with it, unless somebody did something crazy to it, like drill holes in it or something, you can likely send it back to Glock. Or a lot of times, it's a real easy fix, like a new firing pin spring or a new trigger spring or something easy like that. But the vast majority of the time, these guns are shot very little. Some people, blows my mind, but some people just buy guns and don't shoot them. Yeah, that's a thing. So you might find a used gun like that, where it's still got that from the factory grease on it. Little insider pro tip here: if you ever are going to buy a used Glock and you take it apart, you still see that like copper colored grease inside there at several points. That's the grease that it ships with from the factory, and I don't know where you can buy that anywhere. So if you see that in there, it's likely like new in box, right? Not going to be new, but it's like new. You see that kind of grease in there. Also, just pull the slide and lock it to the rear and look at the top of the barrel. If a Glock's been shot a lot, you'll see what's called a Glock smile worn in there, like where there's a big silver kind of smiley face cut into the top of that barrel. If you don't see that, even if you do see that, it doesn't make it a bad gun, but if you don't see like a pronounced silver smile on the top of that barrel, then it's likely not been shot much at all. So used Glocks, they can be a great value. The next two I'm going to list are not cheap guns, but again, cheap does not mean best value. The military's new handgun, the M17 and the M18, they, again, are not cheap. But if you think about the amount of rounds and research and development and all that went into the M17 and M18, for the military, and the fact that you can get those. You can get the M17 and M18, basically the same gun, with all that research and development, and it's proven. Do I think maybe it should have won the handgun trials? I'll be honest, it wasn't my first choice, but it did win. And the fact that it hasn't been majorly rejected so far, had any major issues, tells you that it can probably be trusted. And they're not the cheapest handguns in the world, but they're not the most expensive either. And if you look at all the features that you get with the M17 and M18s. And also, something else that adds to the value is the modularity. Especially if you're not exactly sure what you want. You can get an M17, M18. It's got the same chassis system. So if you decide, I want a bigger grip, I want a smaller grip, because a lot of shooters getting into shooting in handgunning, they don't really know, right? So they might try a different grip and decide, I really like that grip better. Well, instead of having to take a Dremel tool to your Glock, which is what was common back in the day, your Glock, your M&P, or whatever to make it fit your hand, you can spend a few dollars and get a new grip. And you're not married to it, right? If you don't like it or decide, you start doing competition shooting and decide I can shoot faster, a different grip is really going to help me in that, you can spend a few bucks and get another grip. And likewise, the modularity with the slides too, because it's so common and the military adopted it, I'm talking the 320 system and the M17, M18, there's a lot of modularity. You can get different slides, you can get different barrels, and I think that does add some value. I wouldn't put it on there just for that. I think mostly the R&D and that it's a proven system, I think that makes it a good value. And here is a great one, the Canik Rival. The Canik Rival is an amazing gun. It's kind of like the cream of the crop for the Caniks, and Caniks have been around a few years. This is very rare for me, but when I first became aware of them, I knew somebody that had one, and that thing sucked. It was really bad. Like, it was a bad handgun. I was not a fan of them. But to be fair, lots of manufacturers, when they come out, have teething issues. In the last several years, I've known of no major problems with Caniks. And the Canik Rival, they're just an amazing gun. Every time I see one or handle one, I'm like, that's a good gun. I remember the first time I held one, and I was really impressed with the quality of it, and it was just a good gun. And unless you're just a Glock fanboy or something like that, or just have a bunch of Glock mags and want to stick with Glock mags, I'm not really sure if you were going for like a Glock 34, that full-size handgun, why you would get one of those over the Canik Rival. It's just such a good gun. For the money, they're not crazy expensive. And here's a testament to good value. If that thing cost $400 more than it does, I'd still think it was a good value. And it's not expensive. If you tacked a couple $100 onto that, I would say, yeah, it's worth it. It'd still be a decent gun. The fact that it's not that expensive and still such a good gun makes it a great value, and I could not omit it from this list. It's not an American-made gun, and that is what it is. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not a bad gun. It's a good gun. I'm not going to recommend an American-made gun that I don't think is going to work because it's American, and I'm not going to omit something that I think is a really good gun and a good value because it's not American. But I start with American stuff first, and I would look there first if you can, but the Canik Rival brings a lot to the table. If you were trying to bump up to that next level in kind of your polymer striker-fired handgun journey and or starting competition shooting or getting into the world of optics, one of the great things about Caniks, of all the systems I've worked on and worked as a gunsmith on and installed optics on, except for getting it direct cut for what you want, which is what I recommend or prefer, of all the factory systems, I think Canik probably has the most robust system for mounting optics that I've seen. There may be some new stuff that I'm not aware of, but it's far, in my opinion, superior from an engineering standpoint, and take that for what it's worth. I'm not an engineer. But better than the Glock system, which kind of seems like an afterthought on how can we just put some screws in here to put an optic on top. The Canik Rival or the Canik system, I guess there's more than just a Canik Rival. You may want a different model, but their system for mounting optics is very robust compared to a lot of other systems that I've seen. Another thing that adds to the value, a lot of times you get the gun, some manufacturers, and it doesn't come with plates. And plates can be quite expensive. And if you don't know, if you're new to the world of optics, we're kind of in this kind of beta testing phase where there's no one pattern or two patterns like for a full size and a compact. There's several different patterns. There's the Delta Point pattern and the Trigicon pattern and the Doctor pattern and probably several others. Those are the big ones. But Canik comes with a bunch of really good, not cheesy, but good mounting plates. And that can save you a lot. Those mounting plates can be, $50, $75 or more dollars just for a plate. And Canik comes with several of the most popular plates. So again, adding to the value. Alright, let's move out of the world of handguns. I've talked about these guns a lot. Everyone I've ever owned has been crazy accurate. Another American company. The Savage Axis. If you're looking for a bolt gun, and I don't care if it's in 223 just to have a more accurate rifle, or in 223 to hunt varmints, or in 308 to go deer hunting, the Savage Axis is an amazingly accurate and functional rifle for the money. One thing I've always said about Savages is they're ugly, and that is what it is, right? They're not the most attractive guns, but they shoot. They shoot so well. Again, anyone I've ever had of the Savage, and Savage Axis in particular, have been crazy accurate, to the point where if I had spent twice as much money and they had been exactly the same amount of accurate, I would have been totally satisfied. And that's a testament to the value of the Savage Axis. Another thing that I like about the Axis is that they come in stainless. And if you know me, if you listen for any length of time, you know I'm a fan of stainless. The Savage Axises, they're a great value. Also in the Savage line, if you want something a little bit nicer, it's really good for what you get. If you look at other comparable guns with carbon fiber barrels that are that light and that accurate, the Savage Ultralight, they are just phenomenal guns. And if you look at the carbon fiber barrel and everything that you get and all the features that you get for the amount of money you're spending, it's a great value. There's a lot of really good bolt guns out there. You know, the market's kind of flooded with them. But I think really good value, Savage kind of has the market cornered on that. Now, let's dive into the deep, dark world of the black rifle, the AR-15, America's rifle. Effective, fun, and sometimes affordable. The best value in AR-15s, I think, and I did some research, and I really can't recommend any company that I have first-hand experience with more than Palmetto State Armory. Palmetto State Armory, PSA, they blow me away with the prices, number one, and how good their rifles are. I bought one as a beater rifle because I had a really good AR-15 that I used professionally, and I thought, I'm going to get a PSA just for training, right? So when I'm not wearing out my really good AR. For getting those reps and sets, right? Practicing my drills. And I got this PSA, and I thought, if it malfunctions, no big deal, right? That's part of training. I'll get good at remedial action and tap, rack, bang. Fixing double feeds. It's not a big deal. It's a training rifle. I bought this thing, and I shot it, and it impressed me in pretty much every way. With the accuracy, with the reliability. I've had that thing for years now, and I honestly don't know that it's ever had a malfunction. And I'm a guy that uses his stuff. Like, I got it for putting reps and sets in with it. Granted, I don't shoot junk like tool ammo and steel cased ammo and bimetal ammo. I shoot good ammo. I can't remember that thing having a malfunction. And I'm on my second extractor in that gun, to give you any idea. I don't know if they're all like that, but I know other people, or know of other people that have run them that have had zero problems. And I've seen other companies that make ARs that are more expensive, Springfield Armory, that I've seen problems with. I really do like Smith & Wesson M&Ps. They're really good, but if you look at what they cost quite a bit more than a PSA. And if I'm talking value, and I've got no brand loyalty to PSA, it's really hard for me to recommend anything other than PSA. Their prices, I just checked their website. They're awesome prices on their guns. And I don't know if they're all good. They make a ton of guns. And they may sell other brands, but they're Palmetto State Armory guns. Their AR-15s, I think, are a good value. And they've been around long enough, and I think they have the reputation for being a good gun for the money, and I think they deserve that reputation. If it's going to be your one AR, you know my number one recommendation, if you've listened for any length of time, is still going to be the Smith & Wesson M&P. However, if you want to save some money and still get a really good AR for a good value, Palmetto State Armory is a fantastic AR. They come in a lot of different variations. You know, the Smith & Wesson M&P may not come in a configuration that you're looking for. Well, PSA is more likely to, because they have a lot more models. Also, the one that I have, I don't know if they all have the same finish, but I have a nitrided gun, and just the finish on that gun is, I'm not going to say impervious, but I've had a lot of guns rust and give me issues since I've had that thing, and the nitrided components on that gun are amazingly well done. I don't know if PSA does that or they ship that out somewhere to get done, but if you don't know about nitride, it's not bluing. It may look like bluing, but it's a far superior finish in my opinion. and theirs has held up really well. Now, moving into the best value and what I consider the best value category of firearms, period. The most useful, the most utilitarian, the most flexible. The shotgun, right? The shotgun. They're so utilitarian and so versatile and such a good value. You can defend yourself and your family with them. They make a great truck gun. They make a great home defense gun. They are fantastic for up close and personal and CQB type stuff. They are phenomenal for that. They're also the most versatile hunting tool that we have, right? Nothing else can you hunt a mourning dove and take it out of the air or defend yourself from a grizzly bear. The 12 gauge shotgun or the 20 gauge to a lesser extent are phenomenal. They're the most utilitarian. They're the most value. If you could only, and I do a lot of shooting. I love to shoot. I love to train. I do the vast majority of my training, and most of my competition wins are in handgun. I love handgun. I like it because it's difficult. I like it because it's challenging. And I also train with it because it's the gun that I have on me most often, and it's the most difficult to master. And probably second to that is a rifle. But if I could only own one gun, and what a sad world that would be, right? If I could only have one gun, it would be a shotgun. Because it's the most useful. I can defend myself and my family with it, and I can put food on the table in all manner of circumstances, not just deer hunting, which I love to do. But waterfowl, geese produce a lot of meat if there's pretty liberal bag limits. And doves and quail, and I've taken my biggest bear to date with a shotgun. They're phenomenal tools, and they're a great value anyway. So let's look at some of the best values in shotguns. The Maverick 88. The Maverick 88. It's the budget version of a Mossberg 500, which is already a great gun. And if I were only going to own one shotgun, it wouldn't be a Maverick 88. But if you want a good budget, utilitarian, working man's, great value shotgun, there are cheaper guns, but I don't know of any better than the Maverick 88. There's a lot of Turkish import guns and things like that. One, I don't think they have the proven track record of the Mossberg / Maverick, right? The Maverick 88s have been around a while. They're no new kid on the block. They're more like the Beatles. And I don't know if that's a good analogy. I said new kids on the block and they made me think of a boy band from when I was young. And I Googled what the first boy band was and it said the Beatles. But the Beatles are a really good band. So I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. But the point stands that the Maverick 88 has a proven track record. It is known for being reliable. It is an awesome shotgun. And it's not expensive. It gives you a reasonable rate of fire. It's a pump action. It's robust. It's rugged. It's simple. It's proven. And it's affordable. And it's a great value. If hitherto you've only been in the world of Glock 19s or polymer striker fires of your flavor of the day, your polymer striker fire du jour, whatever it is, and black rifles, AR-15s, and I like those kind of guns. If you don't own a shotgun and you're looking at maybe the next handgun, perhaps I would suggest looking at a shotgun, and a good place to start. Because I've done quite a bit of handgun hunting. I will generally hunt with my carry gun, which a lot of people don't do. I've been very blessed to be able to do that. I'm sure there's somebody out there who's done more than me, but by God's grace, I've taken many a deer with 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45 ACP. That to say, it can be done. But if I'm relying on it for food, the shotgun is such a better tool for that. If you think things might get tough in the future, or you just want to explore the world of handguns, you want to be able to feed yourself and your family if times, let's say if the world looks a little bit different in a couple of years than it does now, shotgun. And if you're talking about one with a reasonable rate of fire that's a good value, Maverick 88. Again, there's a lot of Turkish imports and stuff like that. If you're getting one to trust your life and feed your family, and you also want a good value, the Maverick 88. I mentioned it's a copy of the 500. If you can find a good price on a good used 500, even if it is beat up, it's rare to see those so beat up they don't work. So the used Mossberg 500s can also be a good value, but the Maverick 88 is a good value brand new out of the box. Also, Walmart sells a brand called Hatfield. They are a Turkish import. They're a single shot. So if you decide you want to explore the world of shotguns, but you want to go even cheaper, I own one. Honestly, I own it just as kind of a beater shotgun. If I'm going to do in some kind of crazy thing or really adverse conditions and I just want a shotgun that I don't have to really spend any time in maintenance or care about, the Hatfield has proven to be a really good shotgun. It's a single shot, so if you're looking at a shotgun for defense, it would not be my number one recommendation. I would go with the Maverick 88, which is why I started there. If you just want one for maybe hunting and you want an even cheaper value, you may look at the Hatfields. I don't know what they are now with inflation, but they are. Let's do the math this way, a little bit different way. Value for value. If you got a Hatfield shotgun, and you paid quite a bit more for it, I'm adjusting for inflation, than I paid for mine. And I'm not counting in the price of a hunting license because you have to render unto Caesar to shoot whatever game they deem you have to pay for. Whatever that fee is, I don't know what it is for you. I'm not counting that because I don't know, and it can vary wildly. You get your hunting license and you take this shotgun and you take one deer. For the price of really good grass-fed beef, if you do that cost pound for pound, you will easily pay for this shotgun on your first deer, including a box of shells, a box of double-aught buck, or slugs, whatever you want to hunt with, a couple to practice and a couple to take a deer, hopefully only one to take a deer. It would pay for itself on the first deer that you take. If you adjust how much meat you're going to get off that, and you compare that to grass-fed organic beef, which I would consider a comparable meat to what you're going to get, probably even still better if you're eating, wild venison. That shotgun would pay for itself. Plus, you get to kill something yourself and butcher it and eat it, which is better in my opinion anyway. But a great, great value. Now, I threw this out to the patrons. Like I said, if you become a patron, you get to be an active part of the podcast, an active contributor. And I threw this out to our Patreon insider chat, and I got some feedback. Some of the guns, I'll be honest, I'm not going to recommend because I don't think they're a good value or, in my opinion, reliable enough for gunfighting. This is gunfighter life. Guns is a practical tool. If they're just a range toy or something, that's fine. Anyway, the one that was suggested that I will absolutely recommend that I think is a great choice from one of the patrons. The H&R Handy Rifles and Shotguns. They were around for a long time. H&R, NEF, New England Firearms, break open single shot rifles and shotguns. They're a good value. If you don't want the Hatfield, if you want an old American one, if you find one beat up at a gun show, they're just a fantastic design. They weren't expensive when they came out, and the used ones hopefully shouldn't be expensive now. Now, you may see somebody at a gun show that's really overcharging for one or says it's some super rare thing. But in general, they were, especially me growing up, that was a big part of how I put food on the table. I had an NEF 20 gauge with number 4 buck and all other manner of shells. Little single shot shotgun. And if you want to go used and American, you can find some of those old NEF and H&R Handy shotguns and rifles. So yeah, that's a fantastic suggestion and a fantastic value. If you want a little bit more classic option, They also made a really cool thing for a while, and it was a package deal, and got a 22 barrel, like 22 long rifle, which super fun. Talk about a fun plinking gun. A single shot break open 22 and a great training gun for new shooters, and a small game management tool. It came with a 22 long rifle barrel. It came with I think it was a 243 barrel, which is one of my all-time favorite deer hunting cartridges. And it came with a shotgun barrel, and I don't remember what gauge it was, but you could find one of those with like the consecutive packs that came together with the barrels, because the barrels on these have to be fitted, so you can't just buy random barrels. They may or may not work. But yeah, if you could find one of those packs, that's even more value, and the regular ones are a good value. So fantastic value there, and a thank you to the patron for suggesting it. All right, with that, I'm going to start wrapping up this episode. I already mentioned Patreon, but other ways if you want to support the podcast, goodshepherdtraining.com. There's a gear store on there. There's a gear for stuff for the podcast, both alpha male stuff and gunfighter stuff. I designed what I consider a really good range shirt on there. One of my favorite things to wear to training classes or at the range outside is a long sleeve t-shirt. Even in some of the hottest parts of the country, I generally don't want to be running around outside in a tank top. It's not tanning at the beach. It's being outside in the sun sometimes for days at a time. Whether it's hot or cold, a nice long sleeve t-shirt that allows you freedom of movement. It also covers you from the elements and the sun. That's a really good thing to have. And I designed one for gunfighting that's on there, and a myriad of other things that are on there. So anyway, that's the only thing I'll mention this time, but there's a lot of really cool stuff on the merchandise store. If you want to check that out and you want to support the podcast, but you don't want to just contribute, you want to get something out of it that's like you can hold in your hand. A tangible asset, let's call it. Check out the gear store, goodshepherdtraining.com. Alright, I'll throw in the tactical tip and then the tactical verse. Tactical tip of the day. You can't always have guns. I know, what a sad world we live in. Sometimes you have to go to the airport or you go other places. Example, my wife recently flew to and went to a Green Bay Packers game. That was her brother's recent present. He's always been a Green... Well, I don't know always. He probably didn't pop out of the womb that way. But since they were kids, he's been a big Green Bay fan. My wife's brother got tickets to go to a Green Bay game and invited my wife, his sister. So they went to Green Bay. She wasn't going to be able to fly with a handgun. Not with it on her, right? You can check it in. But when she goes to the game, more importantly, which is a mass gathering, it's sadly a target-rich environment for active shooters. I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters, and part of that was planning missions on giant events like this with all kinds of people. I know what a target-rich environment that is for active shooters. I didn't want her to be unarmed, but I knew she couldn't have a gun or even a knife on her because they're going to check. So what I suggested to her and what I have on mine, a lot of people have these metal water bottles. Right? I have one. I've had one for years. It looks like it too. It looks like it went through the apocalypse. It looks like something you would see, Denzel carrying in the Book of Eli. But she's been around. She's done me well in many an adventure. It's just an uninsulated, because tip inside a pro tip, if you're going to rely on it for water purification via heat and heating up water, you don't want an insulated water bottle. So an uninsulated, just stainless steel water bottle with a top on it. That in and of itself can be a good improvised weapon. Like you can grab it and hit stuff with it if you have to, right? But if you just take a simple piece of 550 cord or like one or two of those paracord bracelets and attach it to the top and get some leverage, now you have a more legit melee weapon, right? It's not a gun, right? And by no means do I tell you to get rid of your EDC, your concealed carry, you're going to start carrying a water bottle. But what I'm saying is it's definitely a force multiplier. You're just a, stainless steel water bottle with a piece of 550 cord tied onto it. Whatever length you want. I like it about a foot long. I'm actually drinking out of it as I'm doing the podcast. If that interests you, I did a whole episode quite a while ago on improvised weapons. Maybe it's time to rebroadcast that, but that would be on the Alpha Male podcast, by the way. But that's your tactical tip of the day. Water bottle, stainless steel, with a piece of 550 cord or something similar to give you some leverage to be able to swing it. Something you could even have at the airport, right? They might make you dump the water out. Boo-hoo, you fill it up in the water fountain when you go through the gate or whatever. But better than nothing. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For by me your days will be multiplied. Let's not forget another verse. God gives us all things richly to enjoy, but let it not distract us. Let guns not become idols to us. We're not taking them with us. Naked we came into this world, and naked we're going out of this world. Remember what's really important. Remember the final destination. Remember to seek God and fear God. It's the beginning of wisdom. With that, men, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.